Hey there. Thank you guys for joining us today. I am really excited to bring you one of my great friends, and I'll even say mentors, Dr. Dave Pennington. He is the founder and CEO of Penn Coaching and Consulting, and I can't wait for you to hear about his story, what he's doing now, and all the things in between. So, thank you so much for being with us today, Dave.
Thanks, Amanda. Yeah, Amanda is a good friend. We've enjoyed a good, friendly relationship. She's helped me a lot. Hopefully, I've helped her some, but it's a delight to be with you today.
Thanks. Why don't you give the audience, the listeners, a little bit of background on who you are and how you got your start in this consulting world?
All right. This is kind of my third career, which is maybe funny, but it's just true. Um, I originally have kind of a pastoral ministry background and quite a few years there, mostly larger situations. I don't know if anyone's ever worked in a nonprofit, but it's a challenging world because frankly, people have to volunteer. They volunteer their contributions, they volunteer their services. And so managing that and directing that is more challenging than what many people might think. I've also had a pretty substantial career in private administration in private schools. I think I've been a head of school of six or seven schools. I was an executive director of a group, a state group with 37 schools in it, president of a state group on a national board, officer on a national board. I've done a fair amount of adjunct teaching as well. So a lot of administration. Throughout those first two careers, I've always had people that have say, "Hey, you got time for lunch this week?" And usually it wasn't about whatever we were doing. It was about they had a business decision or they had some personnel problem or whatever. And so they were just kind of getting some input, kind of bouncing some things off of someone that they, when it felt like could help them. And so I've always kind of been really consulting throughout my life. But about 10 years ago, I stepped away from kind of those first two careers and I first of all joined a group. I was with that group for a couple years, got certified as a coach, business coach. And then I started Penn Coaching and Consulting about 10 years ago. And I primarily focus on small to mid-sized business owners. And I work with them to help them scale and grow their company. I do a lot with what I would call organizational structure. I find many business owners are what I call player coaches. And what I mean by that, they're sort of like the starting shortstop on the baseball team, and they're coaching the team simultaneously,
Mm-hmm.
which is doable. You can do that, but it's challenging. And it's hard because you're just kind of going from one role to the next, shifting back and forth. And it can get a little overwhelming. You can lose a little objectivity, and eventually it kind of feels like it's all on you. And I find a lot of business owners kind of feel that way. So I really help them scale, grow, get organized, get structured properly, make sure they're aligned properly within their businesses. And then also, I am at a point where I'm really focusing of late upon helping people actually prepare to sell their businesses when they're ready. And
Mm-hmm.
there's a whole discussion we can have about that, but
Yeah.
that's kind of the scope of what I do.
So I love to talk to people about how it started and how it's going. And because I feel like many of us we go through these periods of transition and almost reinvention throughout our careers. The days of getting a degree and getting a job and retiring from that one job are really long gone. And if they're not long gone, then they're going to be long gone soon for those people that are still kind of in that position, right? So, how how did it start? Like, so talk about how did you get your start? Because I'm assuming you became a pastor first, right?
Correct?
Um, and then all the way down the line to what you do now. How did you get started as the pastor?
Well, that was I would call that a calling. I just felt like that was something that, God wanted me to do. Um, where I was particularly gifted, and I still am, I mean, this is kind of my strength, is I've always been very administrative.
Hmm.
I'm very strategic. I know how to gather the right team around me. I know how to develop that team and therefore develop the organization. And that's just suited me well in everything I've done throughout my life. I carry that into school administration. I know you have an academic background, so getting good teachers is a challenge. Developing those teachers, servicing those teachers well, helping them, succeed in the classroom. All of that worked very well. And so the business part of it just was a natural ebb and flow for me because I've always been about finding the right people and developing those people. And when you can do that, it doesn't really matter what industry you're in, you're going to be successful because it's not all about you. It's more about the people that you bring on your team and helping them grow and develop. And then that causes your organization just to exponentially grow and be successful.
Do you, can you think of anything specific that happened that pushed you to change or pivot out of different roles? So from being the in the church world to the school world, now they're very similar, but did anything just kind of nudge you to take that kind of leap? Even if it's not a massive leap, did anything spark that?
Well, I don't know if there's any particular event per se, but I mean, in any role you're in, after a while, you kind of reach your peak, and it can get it can get a little mundane, a little routine. I've always been a person that needs a challenge. I'm kind of frankly, probably a little bit of an overachiever, in my life, always have been. And so for me, it was more, okay, I've done that. I've been successful at that. I've done something else. I've been successful at that. I kind of had run my course there where I felt like I mean, there wasn't much more I could do that I hadn't already done. And so I needed a new challenge. And, at first I wasn't exactly sure how to kind of make
Hmm.
that bridge because it was very different from before. But once I got out of, I'd always been in the nonprofit world.
Yeah.
Once I got out of nonprofit, I came to for-profit world. And here's what I found. Really, there's not much difference. In fact, I tell my nonprofit friends, if you don't run your nonprofit like it is a for-profit, you will not have a nonprofit.
Right.
Because they often are not sensitive to money and people and all those kind of things. They're very much into the cause or the mission or whatever. But running a nonprofit is a lot like running a for-profit. In business, you want to make money. In nonprofit, you want to provide a service. But organizationally, administratively, leadership wise, all the rest of that, they're very similar. They're really not
Yep.
much difference at all. And so it was a very natural transition. And I just kind of brought all the tools and, things I'd developed through the years, just kind of slid it right over, and it worked really well for me.
So now you've really taken a pretty big pivot, or really, I feel like it's taking advantage of where we are in kind of the business world slash marketplace by what you're currently doing for others. And I know that also you are a lifelong learner. Like you're not afraid to learn something new, which is incredible. And it's I think a big key to success in anything that you do. But now you've seen an opportunity, I'll say, and you're taking it by the horns. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what you are doing now? And it uses all of your background skills, but it's prime for where we are in this economy today and moving forward in the future.
Yeah, sure. I would say that about the first 8 years of Penn coaching and consulting, I would consider myself more of kind of a leadership development
Hmm.
coach. That space was it was when I first came on, it was kind of new. I'd say I'm a business coach, and people were like, business coach. I mean, sports. I mean, and
Yeah.
then once we got over that hump, everybody got comfortable with the term coaching, business coaching. But then I found about 2 or 3 years ago that business coaching space, leadership coaching space, was kind of getting crowded,
Hmm.
and it was very, red ocean, as they say in marketing. And I also stumbled across something called the silver tsunami. And I began to research that.
Yeah.
And I'm a boomer, but the silver tsunami has to do with the fact that they estimate in the next 5+ years that many, many boomers are going to start to sell their businesses. And they're talking about 10 trillion with a T dollars are going to change hands
Yeah.
in the next 5+ years.
Yeah.
And as I researched it, I found that most business owners, particularly those boomer business owners, didn't really have an exit plan. They kind of were just pushing it off, avoiding it, not sure what to do. And so I decided to get certified in that valuations and acquisitions area
Hmm.
and really get acquainted with it so that I could help them take that journey. And that's something that I'm really enjoying. It's a new space for me, and I'm get starting to get some traction in it,
Yeah.
and make connections. And I'm looking forward to helping people be able to exit their businesses lucratively
Hmm.
and with success, low stress, and all the kind of things that they really desire.
I love that you're in this space because even in my small community where I live, I have seen businesses that have been around forever, like ever since I was a child, and all of a sudden they're just gone. They don't even sell. They don't pass hands to a family member or anything. They're just gone. They close. And you are a person now that can come in and help those business owners know their options. I think a lot of people don't know that they have the option to sell something or how to go about it. And so you've developed a process, right? That is really easy for them to understand. Do you want to talk us through that?
Yeah, well, let me kind of focus on the exit because that's what we're kind of chatting about. Here's what I find: a lot of people. I mean, you reach an age where you think, well, I know I can't go on forever, but I don't know how to transition.
Hmm.
And then a lot of people, if you think about it, they spent 20, 30 years building this business. Their lives are so wrapped up in the business. It's like, okay, if I don't do this, what am I going to do?
Yeah.
All my life I've spent doing
The
this.
business is their life, really.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they don't realize there are multiple ways you can exit. For example, you can sell it outright. That's usually what people think of. But there are things you need to do to get ready to be able to sell it outright easily and also lucratively. Most businesses are built on the back of the owner, and if it's
Hmm.
built too much upon the owner, what happens is the valuation goes way down and the sellability also goes way down. So you have to often restructure the business even to be able to sell it easily and for a lucrative price.
Yeah.
But you don't have to sell it, just outright. You can pass it on to your kids. Now
Hmm.
that's a different struggle. Often, what happens is you might have a son or daughter who could take the business and they know a little bit about it, but they don't really know how to run the business because you've been running it. So,
Right.
you may need 6 months, a year, 18 months, 2 years to actually help them get ready to take it over. You can even you can sell it to employees.
Hmm.
And not only can you sell it, but you can even finance it. I've got a customer right now who is actually selling his business to his son. He's a printer and he wants to sell his business to his son and he's going to finance the sell. So he's going to get the price of what he wants for the business and he's going to get the interest off of the sell.
Uh-huh.
And actually, depending on how long he chooses to allow that sell to go on, the term links, it almost doubles his price,
Yeah.
which is really kind of nice.
Yeah.
And then he's really smart. One of the things he's done is he has the business in a building that he owns in a separate LLC. So he will continue to get rent off of the business to pay off his building and to build his equity in that separate LLC. And he's really fairly young. He's in his early 50s. And so he's setting himself up for a second career,
Uh-huh.
maybe in real estate development or something like that, that could actually double, triple, quadruple what he would ever be able to make in just his current business.
But it's
So there's all
also
kind of
allowing
options.
his son to take over without
Yep.
having to take out a massive amount of money from a lending institution. So,
Eh, Yep. And save interest because he's not going to charge his son as much as maybe a bank might charge his son.
mhm. Yeah, that's incredible. So, whenever you help restructure the business and help, and you've been doing this, you did this in your consulting side too, is kind of remove that owner from doing all the things, right? So,
Exactly.
do you find that when you help restructure and help show them the light, so to speak, that they might want to stick around for a little bit longer because they're not working so hard?
Exactly. Sometimes, in fact, I'll walk you through my little diagram here that might help
Yeah.
folks. I have developed a framework. I call it the GAIN framework, and GAIN. And I always start with the owner because I find the owner often has aspirations that he or she never really fully reached. Now, usually we start a business because we want freedom, we want better income. There's a number of reasons why we start the business. And then, if we're not careful, what we discover is we actually wind up with a business that really is pretty much just a job.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of takes control of our lives. And we don't have that freedom because it's like a marriage to the job. We got to
Yeah.
be there all the time. It's hard to even take a vacation. So I
No.
start with the owner and help the owner understand, okay, what are you doing in the business? And I try to get them positioned about 80% of the time in their strengths. Because I find if someone's working in his or her strengths, you enjoy what you're doing, you're successful at what you're doing, and everything just kind of works. But then there are other parts and pieces that need to be covered. So that leads to the A. So generate freedom is where I start, but the
Uh-huh.
A is assemble your dream team. If you're going to really build a business successfully, you need some key team members.
Yep.
Usually 3 to 5. I always say, start with three if you have a pretty good sized business going. And they need to be able to manage different divisions of the company, maybe marketing, sales, deliverables, financials, whatever. And so you want to select those people. Sometimes you already have them on your team. Sometimes you might find that you need to go out and get them. But once you get the right people on your team, then the I leads to ignite growth. And here's what most people do. Once they hire people, they think, you know what? My job's done. I've got it done. I've got good people. No, what you really want to do is you want to lean in and you want to really develop those people so that they begin to actually function at a very high level, exponentially, kind of in their zone of genius. And then everything just begins to ignite and take off. You will also find that as you start to do all of this, your own personal workload will get reduced somewhere between 30 to 50%. And it will
Mm-hmm.
give you time as an owner to kind of begin to dream again. And
Right.
you may open up all whole other markets and things that you never even thought about just because now you have time to actually think about those.
Yep.
And then the end is navigate to scale if that's what you want to do. Some people really don't want to sell. They just want to scale the thing and make more money. And that's
Right.
fine. I can help with that. Or some are positioning themselves so that they're getting ready to sell down the road. And I have some assessments I make available to people so they can understand the value of their company. And it's based upon metrics, 8 metrics that will help you both scale and prepare to sell. So that's kind of the framework that I use to work with people. And I've really found a lot of success with this. And it's kind of a roadmap that people enjoy. They kind of know where they are and what they need to be doing.
Yeah. I really like the part about assembling your dream team because removing people from their day to day will really allow them. We always hear, like, are you working on your business or in your business? Like, I know it sounds so cliche, but it's actually powerful because most people are working in their business, so they can't ever get out of that and see it from a different view. So assembling that dream team is huge.
Well, let me give you one example. I had a client a while back that when I first met with him, I said, well, tell me a little bit about your company, what you do. And he says, I do this and this. And he says, I do all the financials. And I say, really? You do payables, receivables, payroll, all that? He said, yeah, I do all that. So I said, you like doing that stuff? He said, not really. I said, are you good at doing that stuff? He said, no, not really. And I said, well, how much time does it take? And he says, about 8 to 10 hours a week. And so I asked him, I said, well, tell me a little bit about, what's your value in the company as the owner? What's your hourly rate? If I put your financial package and benefits together, what would you be worth an hour? He said, I'm about a 250 an hour guy. I said, really? I said, well, look, I've got a deal for you. I want to do your financials. I'll do payables, receivables, payroll. I'll do all that. It's only going to take me 10 hours a week, and I'm only going to charge you $250 an hour.
Right.
What do you think? And then he paused and he just started laughing. He says, I guess I'm really paying that, aren't I? I said, yeah, you really are. I said, do you realize that you could probably get a bookkeeper for $35, $45 an hour? It probably wouldn't take him or her 10 hours a week
Nope.
because she actually knows what she's doing, you know? And here's the real kicker. What could you do if I could give you back 10 hours every week of your life? How could you help your company grow and develop?
Yep.
And that's kind of a perfect example of what I bump into all the time.
And yeah, fill in the thing, whether it's the accounting part or maybe it's the people management part or whatever it is, fill it in. And yeah, you can probably remove yourself from doing the things you don't enjoy. There are people, that's what's so wonderful. You find the people that love doing those things. And so you now get to be a person that contributes to allowing others to express their gifts and you get to just not
Yeah,
have to deal with
they're doing
it.
what they love doing, and you're doing what you love doing. I'll give you
Yeah.
one more story, and then I know we're coming to a close here. I had a computer service friend. He owned a small computer service company, and I asked him when I first started. I said, "Well, tell me a little bit about your business." And I said, kind of have business development or sales, and you have operations. Which one are you? He says, "Oh, I'm sales. Without any question, I'm sales." And he said, look, I'm not trying to brag, but if I get before people, I close like 80% of everybody I talk to. And I was like, wow, 80% close ratio. That's impressive. I said, what about the operations? He says, no, I hate it. I'm terrible at it. So I said, well, be honest. Right now in your company, what amount of time, energy, and focus are you giving towards sales versus operations? To my surprise, he says, I'm 85% operations and
Oh my.
15% sales.
Yeah.
And I said, you kill it in sales and you hate operations and you're doing 85% operations. So I just paused and I said, well, how's that going for you? Literally, his head drops. He says, it's not. Right now, I hate my life. I'm not sure how much longer I can continue doing this. It's just tough. Okay. I said, well, what if we could find you someone who could do the operations? He won't do it all, but he can do at least 85% of it. And you'll have to help out a little bit. But, just as the owner, you're used to that. You can handle that. And I got you out of operations back into sales. What would that do for your company? He paused. He thought about it. He says, if I did that, I would double my company in 18 months. Long story made short, he found the operations guy. He got back into sales. He got some government contracts, and his company just took off.
Wow.
And that's pretty easy to find,
Uh-huh.
as you work with, but sometimes we're just so close to it
Right.
as the owner, we can't see it.
And you don't know what you don't know.
Yep.
And then you don't know the right steps to take to remove yourself without burning it down, right? Like I think a lot of business owners think if they weren't there, then the business would not continue. And that's a dangerous place to be, I
Well,
think.
it's not only dangerous, it's super restrictive and
Hmm.
and also very, very controlling in the sense that your whole life is controlled, because you're bound. You can't move. You can't go on vacation, or
Yeah.
whatever,
Yeah.
Uh, so structuring your business properly will not only help it grow, scale, become more profitable, but it also will position you so the value of the company goes up. And when you get ready to sell it, the price and the sellability goes up.
Right. That's really powerful. And I really hope that the people that are listening that have some of these challenges in their businesses, or they may be getting ready to scale or to sell, that they'll reach out to you or even just go to your website, which is pencoaching.com,
Right.
and
PENN
yeah,
coaching.com. Yeah.
be able to just take one of your assessments and see where they fall right now on the kind of spectrum of sellability or value, you know?
Yep.
Um, what is something that you could share with others that are they're looking for possibly a transition, whether it's to sell their company or whether it's to switch industries or roles or really discover what it is they're here to do and here like on the planet. Is there some advice you'd give someone that is kind of searching for that next move that you've gone through that could really help others?
Yeah, I have a number of assessments that I use, and you can learn about those on my website. There are also a number of ebooks under the resources section on my website. Um, but what I try to do is I try to help you as an owner or as a person, as a leader, to understand what your zone of genius is.
Hmm.
Um, that sounds real simple. Sometimes we think we know ourselves. Sometimes we do know ourselves pretty well. Sometimes we really don't know ourselves. But you want to position yourself, sort of like the story I told, where you're working in your strengths about 80% of the time. Because if you're working in your strengths, number one, you're good at it. And number two, you're going to be successful.
Hmm.
So if whatever role you position yourself in your company or in another person's company, if it doesn't align with who you are, you're probably not going to be happy. It doesn't mean you can't do the job well. You're just not going to be fulfilled. You're not going to be happy. And so I think that's super important is to really make sure you're working in your strengths. I'm very strategic, and if I'm not strategizing about things and sort of envisioning what could happen in the future, I'm kind of bored. It
Mm-hmm.
just doesn't work for me. The routine, mundane kind of stuff. I mean, it's I've had my third career. I need the challenge.
Yeah.
And so that strategic, futuristic kind of view, all that aligns with me and helps me it kind of cranks me up, and that really enables me to contribute in the lives of others at a high level because it just aligns with who I am. And that's
Yeah.
true for everybody, but they may be different from me, but they have their strengths too.
I think something that you and I recently did was just revisit one of those assessments that we're either given or that we take on our own to really determine what our true strengths are. And you and I did this yesterday, even. And luckily, we're both on the right path. There wasn't anything that I needed to really change, and you were on your right path. But I think for some of those people feeling maybe a little bit lost or maybe dissatisfied with where they're at with their career or their job, to really look at one of those assessments like a DISC or a Strength Finders and look at it from your own point of view. I think sometimes we're given those as maybe we're getting hired for a
Hmm.
position and we just let the company deal with the results. But it's really powerful for the person, for you to go through and look at your own results and evaluate what those say about you and your strengths and how that aligns with the things that you're actually doing. And if you are looking for making a shift or a transition or a pivot, take those strengths into consideration when you're looking at your options.
You
So,
want things to align. If they don't align, it's kind of like you're working against yourself.
yeah,
If they do align, it's kind of like an athlete playing at what we call their zone of genius level. They're playing at a higher level because they're doing what they're designed to do. And the same thing can be true in leadership or in business.
yeah, I agree. Well, I appreciate you being with us today. You are such a great friend to me and mentor, I'll say. Like we just talk about so many different things and I'm grateful to have you in my life. How can others connect with you so they can also take advantage of your wisdom and insight?
Well, you've mentioned already my website, which is penncoaching.com. Or frankly, if you just want to reach out to me, I am on LinkedIn, but my email is dave@penncoaching.com. So it's real easy to connect with me. I like to meet people, kind of, connect with them, see if I can help them. Sometimes I just give them a little bit of advice or counsel. Other times there's opportunities to work together.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a real salesy kind of guy where I'm always trying to push something upon people. For me, it's more about investing in their lives and helping them move forward.
Yeah.
And that's, the impact is really what I'm after at this point in my life. This is, like I say, a third career. So what's one of the things that's really important to me is, can I help you? Can I impact your life? Because I've learned this: if I can impact the life of a leader, it's what I call the pebble in the pond concept. It's
Mm-hmm.
like throwing a pebble in a pond. It has a ripple effect. It helps everybody in that organization.
Yeah.
And if you're a leader, you ought to be wanting to grow. You ought to be making effort to grow. If you're not, then maybe you shouldn't be in leadership, because I think that's
Right.
one of the keys about being a good leader.
I agree with that. And that really fits my philosophy too of wanting to have this exponential impact on the world, right? So if I can just help a few people and they go in turn and help a few more people or hundreds or thousands, depending on their business, then I know that I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. So,
Yep, exactly.
yeah. Well, thank you so much for your time. I do hope people connect with you and learn more about you and take advantage of your wisdom. I think it's just so supportive and encouraging and yeah. So thanks a lot. Glad to
Oh,
have
you're
you today.
welcome. I always enjoy being with you, Amanda. You're a
Okay.
good friend.
Talk to you soon.
All right.
Thank you guys.